A federal database is preventing 184,000 truck drivers from obtaining or maintaining commercial driver's licenses. State departments of motor vehicles gained access in November 2024 to a system tracking every commercial driver's license holder with unresolved drug or alcohol violations. When drivers attempt to renew licenses or upgrade endorsements, the system denies the transaction and automatically downgrades their commercial driving privileges without administrative review. In just 2 months, the enforcement change has disqualified more drivers than the jobs lost during the entire 2023 freight recession. Affected drivers face a return-to-duty process that can cost up to $1,200, and it can take months to complete. Most employers will not fund the process. Data shows the majority never begin the process. Instead, they accept work in construction, warehousing, or other industries where commercial licenses are not required. The Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse became operational in January 2020 as a federal database tracking violations of DOT drug and alcohol testing regulations. Medical review officers, substance abuse professionals, third-party administrators, and employers report violations within 3 business days. When a CDL holder fails a drug test, refuses testing, or violates alcohol regulations, their database status changes to prohibited. Federal law prohibits drivers in prohibited status from operating commercial motor vehicles. Records remain in the system for 5 years. Under the initial system, employers were required to query the database before hiring drivers and annually for existing employees. The structure created a tracking capability, but enforcement depended on employer compliance and on random roadside inspections. Phase 2 was implemented on November 18, 2024. It mandated that state driver licensing agencies query the clearinghouse before processing any CDL transaction, including renewals, transfers, upgrades, and new issuances. If the query returns prohibited status, the state cannot complete the transaction. States receive automated notifications from FMCSA when drivers licensed in their jurisdiction enter prohibited status. The state must then initiate a downgrade process within 60 days, converting the commercial driver's license to a standard operator license and removing all commercial driving privileges. The restriction appears on the physical license and in motor vehicle record checks. Law enforcement can identify the restriction during routine traffic stops. The downgrade remains until the driver completes the full return-to-duty process and the clearinghouse status changes to not prohibited. Since the clearinghouse launched in 2020, 267,360 drivers have received at least one drug or alcohol violation. As of January 2026, 184,337 drivers remain in prohibited status, representing 69% of all drivers ever flagged. Only 78,178 drivers, approximately 29%, have completed the requirements to clear their records and resume commercial driving. Marijuana violations account for 59% of all positive tests, totaling 184,839 cases since 2020. In 2024, 34,936 commercial driver's license holders tested positive for THC. Cocaine, methamphetamine, opioids, and PCP comprise the remaining drug violations. Alcohol violations represent a smaller share, but they carry identical consequences under federal regulations. As of September 2024, roughly 134,779 drivers in prohibited status had not initiated the return-to-duty process. Before Phase 2 implementation, these drivers could maintain valid CDLs despite federal prohibitions against operating commercial vehicles. The license displayed no restrictions, and detection required officers to conduct separate clearinghouse queries during traffic stops. Most state and local law enforcement agencies lacked direct system access. Drivers renewed licenses at DMVs without triggering database checks, and some transferred licenses between states without detection. In 2024, law enforcement cited more than 50,000 drivers for operating commercial vehicles without proper credentials. An additional 3,000 citations were issued specifically for driving while in clearinghouse prohibited status. These enforcement actions resulted from roadside inspections and weigh station checks conducted by agencies with clearinghouse access. Phase 2 shifted enforcement to state DMVs, where the licensing transaction itself triggers the database query and prevents credential issuance or renewal for prohibited drivers. Federal regulations specify a multi-step return to duty process for drivers in prohibited status. The first requirement is an evaluation by a substance abuse professional called an SAP, who is a licensed counselor, social worker, psychologist, or physician with specialized Department of Transportation training. The SAP conducts a face-to-face assessment, reviews violation details, and prescribes education, counseling, or treatment. Initial evaluations cost between $400 and $500, and they are typically paid by drivers because most employers do not cover return-to-duty expenses. Education programs involve courses on substance abuse and safety-sensitive work, and they can last from a few days to several weeks. Counseling includes individual therapy or group therapy. Treatment programs range from outpatient services to residential rehabilitation. They can extend for several months and add substantial cost. After completing the prescribed program, drivers return for a follow-up SAP evaluation to determine successful compliance. The SAP must approve progression before the driver can proceed to return-to-duty testing. Return-to-duty tests use observed collection procedures, with a witness directly observing specimen collection. The test must produce negative results. Positive results create new violations, requiring the entire process to restart. Once a negative return-to-duty test is reported to the clearinghouse, the driver's status changes from prohibited to not prohibited. State licensing agencies receive notification and can process commercial driver's license reinstatement. Federal regulations then require a minimum of 6 unannounced follow-up tests during the first 12 months of safety-sensitive work. The substance abuse professional, or SAP, determines the follow-up testing schedule and can mandate additional tests or extend the period up to 60 months. Follow-up tests also use observed collection. Total costs range from $500 to $1,200 for cases requiring only education and testing. Drivers needing extensive counseling or treatment face costs exceeding $1,500. Timelines vary from under 1 week for education requirements to several months for treatment programs. Data indicates most drivers do not attempt the return-to-duty process. The 134,779 drivers who had not started the process as of September 2024 follow a typical pattern: a failed test, prohibited status, job termination, and a transition to work outside of trucking within weeks. Construction, warehousing, manufacturing, and delivery services that do not require a commercial driver's license provide alternative employment without return-to-duty requirements. Completing the process requires financial investment and months of unemployment, with uncertain job prospects afterward. Most employers will not hold positions for drivers in prohibited status. Some employers decline to hire drivers with any clearinghouse violations, regardless of successful return to duty, because violations remain visible in the database for 5 years. Employers conducting pre-employment queries see the full violation history even after a driver completes return to duty. Owner-operators with their own authority and equipment have direct financial incentive to clear their status. Drivers with specialized skills or long-term employer relationships sometimes receive company support and job guarantees. Younger drivers with limited alternative career options occasionally invest in the process to preserve their trucking careers. The 24,114 drivers who have completed all requirements, including full follow-up testing plans, represent approximately 9% of total violations since 2020. Between those who completed all requirements and those who never started, 53,964 drivers had begun but not finished the return to duty process as of the most recent data. Some completed SAP evaluations but not prescribed treatment. Others finished treatment but had not passed return to duty testing. Additional drivers returned to work but remained under active follow-up testing plans. State departments of motor vehicles process millions of commercial driver's license transactions annually. Under Phase 2, renewals, transfers, upgrades, new licenses, and restriction removals all trigger clearinghouse queries. Queries that return prohibited status block the transaction and initiate downgrades. The system operates automatically with no discretion available to DMV staff. Drivers attempting to renew expiring commercial driver's licenses receive denial and downgrade notification. Drivers seeking hazmat endorsements or air brake restriction removals trigger queries that reveal prohibited status. License transfers between states are flagged during mandatory clearinghouse checks. Automated notifications ensure states receive information about new violations within days. When violations are reported to the clearinghouse, FMCSA sends electronic notification to the state that issued the driver's commercial driver's license. States have 60 days to initiate downgrade procedures, preventing drivers from operating on valid licenses for extended periods after violations occur. For carriers, Phase 2 creates indirect benefits without imposing new compliance requirements. Companies must still conduct pre-employment and annual clearinghouse queries as mandated under Phase 1. Automatic license downgrades reduce the risk of unknowingly employing prohibited drivers. Valid commercial driver's licenses now provide greater assurance that drivers are not in prohibited status, though carriers cannot rely solely on license validity and must continue conducting independent clearinghouse queries. 184,337 drivers are currently disqualified, and that number represents a specific point in time. The number changes daily as new violations occur and occasional drivers complete return to duty. Data shows approximately 4,778 new violations monthly as of early 2025. Return to duty completions remain in the low hundreds per month. The gap between entries and exits continues to widen. Unlike temporary factors affecting driver supply, clearinghouse enforcement operates continuously regardless of freight demand or unemployment rates. Every commercial driver's license holder faces identical disqualification risk from positive tests, and every disqualified driver faces identical return to duty requirements.